Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. Today, I want to talk about how I got started. I have a lot of stories, obviously, and I think it would seem that I planned some of this, like the businesses I owned and started, how I ended up in China in the first place as a English teacher in a school that was already functioning well. But I did not. I just kept my eyes open for opportunities, and I definitely did not do this myself. People helped me start out and helped me continue on. Infrastructure was there, the networks of support were there, and opportunities were there that I hoped would help me get closer to what I wanted to do, which I hadn't even clearly defined yet. But I did know that I didn't want to go back to the American work culture I came from. I knew I wanted to work less and still enjoy my life. My life. The way I wanted to live it. So I want to get into how I did get started, because it's a funny story, and I think it does show you exactly how important it is to keep your eyes open for opportunities. Especially if it's such a low cost to you to investigate that opportunity. Check if it's real. If it's not, whatever. If it is, great. So I did not need a huge push because of how my life was going. I was very dissatisfied with the work culture and the environment of business in the United States. It just didn't feel right to me. So when the opportunity did present itself, I took it. I hope this podcast helps provide a little push in addition to all the other help and research you can do by yourself. I hope that by me sharing this story, you can see that you don't really need to plan that much as long as you have a general idea of what you want or what you don't want, which was my case, and are willing to keep an open mind. During this time, I was basically working at a sandwich shop that I had been promoted in very quickly, and I was beneath the assistant manager and then the manager. And I was doing well, and after a while I asked for a raise, and he explained to me that he couldn't give me a raise because I was almost making as much as the assistant manager already, which shocked me because I was making barely above minimum wage. And then he explained to me that as the manager, he was barely making more than that. He was making like $1 more per hour. And that was depressing to learn because he was a very earnest guy. He really wanted the store to do well, and he really threw his all into it. And he's making like $1.50 more than me, who has no responsibilities. It was disheartening to find that out, but also very important. Talk with your coworkers about how much you make. Because as soon as I realized what the actual pay scale was in total for a franchise sandwich business, I realized that I was not going to participate in that work culture indefinitely. It was insane to me to realize that if I got through all of that and worked as the manager of a franchise operation, I was going to be making barely more than I would now, and I'd still be working the 40-plus hour weeks. That was not by any measure the only moment, but it was a clarifying moment where I realized, oh, this work culture is wrong in some way. Something is wrong with American service culture if this is what American work ethic rewards dedicated people with. The bare minimum of survival, and in some cases not enough to survive. That manager must have also realized what a poor deal he was getting, and he decided to quit eventually. And this is kind of when things started kicking into you have to do something else territory. They hired a terrible, ridiculous manager instead of promoting the assistant manager who knew the store inside out and would have made a great manager. And I gave the new manager a shot, but I think because I was in charge of so many responsibilities in the store, he tried to demean me in front of the other employees to make it clear that he was in charge and not me, even though I was doing all of the responsibilities of the store manager and he didn't know what to do because he was new. There was no reason he would know anything. So he tried to make me look bad in front of the other employees. And so after he did that a few times, I told him that I was quitting because he was treating me disrespectfully in front of the other employees. And I said that to him privately in his office. And he asked me to stay, and then he offered a raise. And then he said if I ever wanted to come back, I could, that the job economy was terrible. And I was like, well, you're way more terrible than any economy I'm going to face. And I left. A coworker later told me that he spread the rumor that I had talked bad about everybody in the company, and then he had to fire me because I was so rude about my coworkers. So that was definitely a good situation that I left. Then I worked for another place that it didn't work out at after 2 weeks. It felt a lot like the last job, even though it was in a completely different type of restaurant. It felt dead end to me, and I didn't even realize that it was dead end because it was just another service job. And that same morning, that bad manager from the sandwich shop fired another coworker without telling him, and that guy showed up for work, and the manager was like, "Ooh, sorry, you're fired." Didn't tell him why, didn't give him any notice, just kicked him out of the store. So me and this guy were talking, and he called me up the same morning that I was actually let go from that 2-week probationary period where maybe I wasn't giving it my all because I couldn't find the will to care. And he asked to come over, and I said, yeah, let's play Mario Kart. And I only had one controller, so I needed a second controller immediately. Before that, I decided I needed some mead, which I was making a lot back then. And so I was enjoying a glass of mead, and I popped onto Craigslist, searched for an N64 controller, in between Donkey Kong 64 and a packet of 5 toothbrushes. I found the following apparent job listing. Are you looking for a new career? Do you want to live overseas? Are you excited about other cultures? Beijing English teacher needed. Female teachers preferred. And I was like, perfect. Obviously, I didn't know if I was really what they were looking for or if the job was real at all since it was obviously in the wrong section of Craigslist, but I thought, why not try it out? So I clicked on the ad, and there was a longer paragraph asking if I liked languages, ready for adventure, how about different cultures, and most importantly, was I a female teacher? And after I read the offer like a few times, I was like, well, it seems like a real person wrote this. So I figured, what the heck, why not write back to this? Maybe it is a real job offer. And I wrote back, and this is a quote, I am not a woman. Sorry about that. But coincidentally am an adventurous person looking to travel overseas and learn new languages while appreciating different cultures. I thought that was a funny opener. And after that, I wrote a more normal, human, adult paragraph afterwards and told them that I was interested in the job. I sent off the email. I successfully applied for the job. I resumed my video games and mead drinking. After crushing a few rounds of Mario Kart, I saw a little flicker in my peripheral vision, which was a reply email. I saw that the person who had written that job offer had written back to me already. This email was way less formal than a slightly informal job offer already, but he asked, hey, when can you meet for a Skype interview? Since he had answered me immediately, I answered back immediately and said anytime after 9 a.m. tomorrow morning would be best, and I could meet according to his schedule. I would have said immediately, but I had been drinking mead for like an hour, and I was anxious about job interviews at the time. I included my Skype name in the email, sent it off, and waited for a response. And then he didn't get back to me. So by that evening, I was like, oh, maybe it was just a weird phishing email, or maybe it wasn't a genuine job offer, because he had answered so quickly the first time. And I was just like, oh, thanks a lot, China. Very ungraciously. The next day, I went for a run, and then I looked for other job listings, but they all looked the same as stuff I'd done before or stuff I was not interested in, and then I checked all the wines that I was fermenting. This was in Portland, Oregon, and I was going to make beer at first, and then I went into the beer store, and he was like, hey, just make wine, it's way easier, and you can make every flavor, and it's great. So I had blackberry, cherry wine, pear wine, apple, and I had to sterilize some equipment and make some adjustments and put in some new stuff, make sure they all still tasted good. And so it wasn't really until 4 p.m. that I was able to get back to Mario Kart. So I sat down, started playing, and a few minutes later, Skype started ringing on my computer. Bill was calling, and my brain clicked real quick, and I realized it was the guy I had emailed with yesterday. He hadn't emailed me back with a time or anything. He was just calling because he had the Skype username, I guess. So I'm wearing a t-shirt in my pajama pants. The t-shirt says, "Reading, this shit is awesome," holding an N64 controller. I threw the controller to the side of the room, pulled on a button-down shirt that I put like the first 3 buttons on, and then sat down at the chair in front of my laptop. Only 3 bloops in. I moved real quick in case this was a real job offer. I said a few practice sentences out loud so my voice wouldn't crack and make it obvious that I hadn't talked all day because I was playing video games and drinking wine. And then I relaxed my shoulders, leaned forward on the desk, one elbow up, sort of propped my cheek against my fist, clicked accept, and said very casually, "Hey there, Bill from Enlightenment English?" As if I had dozens of interviews to get through, but I remembered his name and the name of his school. He affirmed that he was. He apologized for not getting back to my email. We exchanged pleasantries. He explained that he just had to fire a teacher and needed a new one. He told me a whole story about how that happened, and it was a well-deserved firing. And after that story, I asked about flight reimbursements, how the pay worked, how the hours worked. But by that point in the interview, which is like 5 minutes later, it was pretty clear that I was interested and he was interested in hiring me. And after that, he said, "So, do you want to come to China?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. When do you need me there?" And Bill said, "How quickly can you get here?" 2 weeks, I offered, because I had never moved before, and I had to cancel my apartment, sell all all this stuff that I had no idea how to do. Bill said, "Yeah, great." So, like 2.5 weeks later, my plane touched down in Beijing, and I lived there for the next 3.5 years, teaching English and having adventures. I got my passport earlier that year, or like 6 months ago something, because I just figured I would use it eventually. I eventually wanted to travel, although I didn't want to go to China specifically because I heard about all the smog. And of course, that's the first country I traveled to. So I already had my passport. I went back and forth with Bill. He explained I could just mail it to a company who would give me a Chinese tourist visa, and once I was in the country, they could get me my work visa. Didn't happen, not a big deal. So during the last week, I found 2 other people to get into the apartment that I was renting. I knew the land property guy, so I was able to talk to him. And I said, "Hey, these guys are ready to sign a contract right now. Can I get my deposit back?" He actually agreed after giving it some thought for a few days. I deposited that in my bank so that now I had the money to get back from China. These were my last pennies that I was flying over to China on. And I got the ticket, and then I realized that I didn't have the visa back. I had mailed my passport off to New York, and I had like 3 days left to get it back because I need it to get on the plane to go to China, and I didn't think about those timetables at all. And I just got lucky, and the afternoon before the morning that I left the next day, my visa arrived right before evening dropped in Portland, Oregon. So plan that part a little bit better. Make sure you have your passport in hand with an approved visa. But mine landed the day before I needed it. I had sold all of my stuff on Craigslist the previous week, moved everything or sold everything. Really, I just sold everything. I took 1 suitcase that was half empty, got on my plane, and made it to Beijing. So this last week we hadn't talked a lot, but I had arranged for Bill to pick me up at the airport. So I landed in departures, did not have a cell phone, did not have local currency for the payphone. Nobody spoke English. Everyone was speaking Mandarin. And I just stood around looking confused for a while because Bill wasn't there. Nobody was there to pick me up. And I was like, well, what do you do when you're in Beijing nobody speaks your language, and you don't have money to use the phone, even though you do have a phone number. And a guy from Hong Kong actually walked up to me and asked if I needed help and put in the 5 cents so that I could use the phone at the payphone. And saved my bacon. I couldn't believe it, but that was the first amazing, miraculous kindness I experienced while traveling that have never let up. People are always kind to travelers. It's fantastic. So I call up the number of the school that I got, somehow dialing a Chinese phone number that I did not understand at all. I was so confused at this point. And I hear, after a couple rings, hello? And I knew that sound. Like, I didn't know the voice, but that is the sound of a drunk person. I was very sure. Hey, it's Kai. Oh, hey. Kai? Yeah, I just landed. I'm in the waiting area. Oh, you're in Beijing? Yep, I'm in the waiting area. And he says, cool, man. Aaron and I are, like, almost there. We're in the taxi now. Like, this fucking traffic's bullshit. And then I heard a chair scrape. And so I was like, okay, so they're not even in a taxi and not at all near to where I am an hour later after I landed. But whatever. I said, great, I'll be under this huge sign that says departure waiting area, number 5. And he says, great, we're like almost, And then I heard more chairs scraping. Be right there. We'll be right there. Okay, great. See you soon. So I hung up and then realized he wasn't going to be able to call me back. And so I just had to wait and hope he found the departure waiting area. Then I know I should have been in the arrivals waiting area, but I had to walk around for a while and a Hong Kong person had to find me to help me make this call. Which is even crazier because Hong Kong's at the bottom of the country and I was, 1,600 miles away at the top of the country. Thanks, man, whoever you were. So I'm waiting. I don't recognize anyone that is not Chinese. And then after, 40 minutes or something, 45 minutes, a 6'3", baggy pantsed, Hawaiian shirted, bald, red bearded man walks in, puts his arms behind his hips like a Naruto run, but he's not moving, and shouts out, Kai! And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's probably the people that I'm waiting for. And someone else walks in right behind him. The shouting man was Aaron, and the guy who walked in behind him was Bill, who I'd been talking to via email. Bill saw the only white person in the entire airport. Aaron didn't and started shouting my name again, but followed Bill when he headed over to me. They were both not sober, but very friendly, very happy to meet me. Aaron especially was so glad to see a new face, he said. And then Bill asked me, I couldn't find you forever. I thought you said you were at gate number 5? And I looked over and pointed at the giant 5 painted on the wall. And I was like, yeah, I saw that 5. And Bill squinted at it. Was like, yeah, we thought it was a different 5. And I was like, yeah, okay. Because the situation was already crazy, so who even cares? And I was in my first foreign country, so everything was new to me anyway. I wasn't that concerned that they were too inebriated to find the number 5 painted 12 feet tall on a column. They were both surprised that I didn't have hardly anything on me. I had a backpack and a suitcase, and both of those were not by any means full. And they asked me how much Chinese I knew that I was willing to move to China, and I said, Lan Se, which is blue in Mandarin, Hong Se, Huang Se. They were both ecstatic and clapped and whooped. Aaron was like, I didn't know that when I came over. And then I said 1, 2, 3, but I couldn't count past 3 in Chinese. But I had 6 Chinese words and my 2 escorts, and we made our way through the city. Bill gave me money out of his wallet, 300 kwai, for the first few days, and just told me to pay him back whenever. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning when we stopped in front of a neighborhood that looked like everywhere else I had seen since I was completely unfamiliar with everything, and Beijing is like 20 miles wide at this point already. It's 30 miles wide now, 10 years later. So we get out, start walking down alleys. They beeline toward the open 7-Eleven. We get 6 beers. and crack them on the walk back to the school, which is like 2 minutes. So by the time we got there, I'd had a couple sips, kind of nursing my beers, and both of them were halfway done with their beers already. But when I knew we were there, I just glugged it down. Oh, but a very prophetic cultural thing happened in China that let me know what this adventure was going to be like. I opened the second beer. It's a pull tab. And instead of opening the beer bottle, the ring tab, the ring itself, just popped right off the can. And it was still closed and everything. And I just happened to pull off the tab just wrong. This new foreign thing broke in a way that I was utterly perplexed by. So I used the school's screwdriver to pop that puppy open, and we drank and talked about how I was here and how weird it was, even though we had discussed exactly when I was coming and when I would arrive. Aaron and Bill lit up some weed. I smoked a very little because my mind stops when I smoke. Just doesn't work anymore. After hanging out for an hour or two with these people I knew nothing about, but who seemed very friendly and were giving me a bunch of free drugs, Bill said he was about to head back and he could take me back to the apartment, and I didn't understand anything because of my very short puffs of the weed. So I just said something like, no, and he's like, are you sure that's going to be your apartment so I can just take you there now? Didn't understand what he was saying. So I just said something like, no, me table, funsies. And he was like, okay, we'll see you tomorrow then. We'll come back here tomorrow morning. Okay. And they left, and now I was alone in the school. I realized where we had been taken to. We were in the conference room drinking a bunch of beer. And there were tables in the classroom. I pulled them together, fell asleep, and passed out until the next morning. I woke up an indeterminate amount of time later. The sun had risen. There were people shouting in the streets. I looked out and saw the 7-Eleven that we had bought beer from the night before a half a block away. And there was Chinese writing over all of the stores, and everyone was yelling in Mandarin, and everything looked different than anything I had ever seen before. Everything. And I thought to myself, holy shit. And that's how I got to China. And then I lived there for 3.5 years, and I was very passionate about my work. I was never drunk on the job or under any kind of influence when I was working or teaching. None of us were, actually, which was encouraging to see after such a debauched introduction, that everybody was very professional on the premises. After class, totally different story, but pre and during class, everybody stayed professional and did not take anything. We all cared about our students a lot, and we wanted them to do well. And we wanted to be able to teach them well. And it became this amazing adventure that defined a huge part of the rest of my life. I'll get into that more later. I just wanted to throw it out that it's certainly not a direct path that's planned out that you have to follow to start traveling and begin creating your own life. I took a gamble. This one worked. Despite their unprofessional demeanor, those two guys were very nice and helped me start my new life. And they helped me every day for years. So however things ended up when I left, I certainly can't begrudge these people for helping me begin the best part of my life, what has become my favorite part of life, not being afraid to take opportunities and living abroad. As soon as I was in China, that first night before I even got to the school, when I was waiting in the airport, I loved it more than I loved anything in the past couple of years in the United States. I had this sinking feeling while I was still in the States. I was like, something is wrong. And then I found out, it's this American work culture. It's this country that is the problem. It's this confining national perception of reality. It's the work. Something's wrong here. None of this works for me. And as soon as I landed in China and I was just surrounded by new words and new shapes and new cultures, new walking habits, everything was different. I was like, this is correct. This is where I should be. This is exactly my zone. And life, despite the language barrier, despite the new culture, life for those 3.5 years was so much easier and more comfortable than what I had experienced up until that point. I'll get into those stories in other episodes, of course. But again, I just wanted to say, this was a very unconventional opportunity. I took it. It worked out. If it sounds too risky, just answering a job offer that's obviously in the wrong place on a website, don't take that job. That's totally fine. Your opportunity, you might be able to recognize an opportunity that I wouldn't be able to see. I can recognize opportunities between N64 cartridges and toothbrushes on Craigslist. That makes sense to my swirly-whirly brain. However you find opportunities, take them, the ones that you're comfortable with, or at least pursue them. They will afford you chances to get out and do what you want, or stay in and do what you want, whatever you want. But unless you pay attention to opportunities as they show up and give them a real chance, it's very difficult to follow the life that you want. Like, you can't start a journey without taking that first step. If you are looking for starting something completely new, head to China. It's very safe. The food is amazing. The people are kind, even though they're abrasive according to our sensibilities. They're very warm-hearted. The language is fascinating. The mountains, the landscape is fascinating and beautiful. The cost of living is 90% cheaper than the US. I was living with a dull heart, and getting jump-started like this was exactly what I needed. It doesn't have to be China, but if you're living with a dull heart, traveling might be exactly what you are looking for too. Or it might be adjacent to what you're looking for, and traveling will lead you to what you're actually looking for. In any case, I'll close this out. You can message me at bitofarambler@gmail.com, and let's see how much the flights are for Beijing from the US this week. Okay, flights. Straight to Beijing, 394 from LA, 433 from New York, 466 from Las Vegas. You can buy those in a couple days from this recording that I'm doing. It's cherry blossom season, so all the prices are hiked up $100, $150, because last month the tickets to Japan were $200. But you can fly directly to China for less than $400, or around $400 from wherever you are in the US, and just start this great adventure at the drop of a hat. Jobs are available for native English speakers in a safe country with great food and nice people. If you have any questions about any of this, I have talked about this stuff to hundreds of people. I still love talking about it. Shoot me an email at bitofarambler@gmail.com. bitofarambler@gmail.com, and I will respond to you if I can. I will definitely read all of your messages. Thank you, and I will talk to you on the next time.